Hello, brothers and sisters, fellow Equatorians. This is Sabata with the EQUATORIA Advocacy Foundation. I'm the Director for Resource Mobilization and Project Management. Today, I'm coming to discuss with you what to expect in the revitalized transitional government of national unity. Of course, it has been formed, by decree and the devolution of powers that could have helped the political conditions within the equatorial states to improve has not happened. There is this notion that the devolution of powers, that's the federalism, will be these are constitutional matters and will be discussed somehow, sometimes, when people are going to be discussing how government will run. Look, this notion is not well-informed notion, because when the forum for the revitalized RCs was discussed, and also revitalized RCs was discussed, the provisions that were discussed, those provisions that are expected now to be included into what is called a revitalized transitional constitution, those provisions are certain fundamentals or basis to what will be added on for the constitution of South Sudan. So what I'm saying is the provisions that have been discussed during the time when RCs was discussed, during the time when revitalized RCs was discussed, those provisions that were signed and the revitalized provisions, those provisions were supposed, of course, to be eventually amalgamated into what is called the revitalized transitional constitution, all right, upon which the revitalized TGONU, the transitional government of national unity, would be operating on during this transitional period. And those provisions are basically provisions that eventually are part of what is called constitution, because when the transitional period ends, those provisions are not going to be taken out. And instead, those provisions are going to be built upon. You see, those provisions are going to be built upon and eventually will end up becoming what is called the entire constitution of South Sudan, as we then transition into what is called a permanent government, opposed to what is called a transitional government. So for that reason, to argue that devolution of powers should wait until some other time when people are going to be discussing constitutional matters doesn't make any sense, because these provisions that have been signed are part of what is going to be in the constitution. So which other constitutional matters are going to be discussed? The constitution is eventually going to be evolving. So we already have certain fundamentals. They're already there. They're not going to go anywhere. And eventually that is going to develop. Constitution are documents that develop. That is why, for example, in the country that I live in the United States of America, the constitution of this country has been built long time ago. All right? And until today, as I speak, today is, let me just mention the year and a month, we are in March 2020. That constitution is still evolving. Constitutions are not fixed. They evolve. They continue to evolve. So the constitution that we have right now, all right, the provisions that have already been signed, that are in await, and they are not supposed to be waiting. Those provisions were supposed to be amalgamated into what is called the revitalized transitional constitution, because the transitional period cannot operate without a constitution, right? It doesn't make sense. Government cannot operate without a without a constitution. So basically, what is going to happen is, because those provisions are not amalgamated into the transitional constitution, so basically we have the transitional constitution of 2011 that pretty much is operating, right? We do not have these provisions that have been signed are not part of the law of the land at this point. So, fellow Equatorians, to be told, or rather, so, this of course is something that I'm talking to fellow Equatorians, but this is something that is of South Sudanese. To be told that devolution of powers or federalism will wait until constitutional matters are going to be discussed, I mean, that just doesn't make any, doesn't build any logic. What could have happened is, right before the formation of this government, okay, right before the appointments on those governmental seats happened, the devolution of powers could have been put in place, so that when the government gets formed, the state governments will know what their responsibilities are, and the central government would know what their responsibilities are, and as they function, so that one will not overlap, all right, over responsibilities of the other one, or else that will then be overreach of powers. But eventually those things have not happened, and because those things have not happened, what should you expect, fellow Equatorians? Why am I talking to you, fellow Equatorians? Because let me be honest with you. Federalism in South Sudan is something that is more important to you than to people who are coming from the other, let me call, regions. And when I'm talking about regions, I'm talking about the Upper Nile region. That means all the states that comprise the region of Upper Nile, all the states that comprise the region of Bahar al-Ghazal, and the states that comprise the region of Equatoria. Federalism is important for the people who are coming from the states that comprise the Equatorial region, as opposed to people who are coming from the other regions. Because let me give you a very simple example. When look at the Nuer, for example, they come from the area of the Upper Nile region, but practically in their territories, you will hardly find the central authority pushing down arbitrary or random governance to their people. No, government in their territories run the way they want to run their government, under their governors. All right? It is always in your areas, you the Equatorians, that you will find central authority pretty much exercising random authority. And why am I saying random? Let me give you a simple example, like their national security, for example. The way their national security are treating fellow Equatorians within the territory of Equatoria is something that is not seen in the other part of the regions. In this sense, then federalism becomes something that is of importance to you, and that is why I have from time to time made this argument that you should hold and you should argue the issue of federalism loud and clear. Even if the other people are not talking about it, it is because they don't see any much of a benefit to it. But as far as to you, it will play much benefit, because with that devolution of powers, eventually issues to do with, like, for example, security will be managed by your own people instead of the central authority. And once security is managed by your own people, then you will not be seeing the arbitrary beatings of some fellow Equatorian young men and young ladies around the territory of the Equatoria by the security guys. Or eventually, if security is controlled by your people, then you will not be hearing about unknown gunmen eliminating lives of people within the territory of Equatoria. So it is actually beneficial for you guys. And with federalism, or with the devolution of powers, your fellow doctors, engineers, and other highly educated people would be able to associate, come together, and pretty much work within the limits of your state and build what is called systems, be it systems of roads, be it systems of healthcare, be it systems of education, even how the state judicial system functions. You have lawyers who can come and also sit together in an association and basically build those kind of systems. Your people can then eventually, with devolution of powers, do that. But without the devolution of powers, all of them are going to run to the authority to find jobs. And because, you know, South Sudan, it's a unitary system right now. Government has become like a very huge industry, and it's employing everybody. All right, private sectors are rarely being seen at this point. So the devolution of powers have failed to happen. What is then going to happen? What you should expect to see is, especially in some areas like, for example, security, which is very important, which needed to be improved in the area, in the equatorial area, you are not going to see any improvement. It's going to remain as it is. The national security guys will continue to treat the people of Equatoria the same way they have always treated the people of Equatoria. All right. I don't know if the Mobutu Mamour, who is the minister of national security, I don't know if he will be able to control somebody like Akol Kur to operate under certain regulations, so that further Mabishufu amongst the security personnel, which I doubt, because most of the Equatorians who are working at the national level do not have what is called institutional privilege. All right, they are just there. They are filling up those seats, but they do not have powers. They do not have the voice. You know, they feel they do not have what is called work security. You can always be taken out of your position when you criticize a person who is coming from Bahar al-Ghazal or Bor, with the way he or she functions. That is, if he or she is in portfolio and under you. That is, in specific, I'm trying to say somebody like Mobutu Mamour, if tries to complain about the behaviors of security and tries to talk this with Akol Kur, Akol Kur may not take him serious, because Akol Kur himself might be favored by the president. So Akol Kur will always see himself as though he's closer to the president. Why worry about Mobutu, who is the minister in the middle here? So these are things that could happen. And the message I'm trying to give you, Equatorians, is that with the failure in federalism right now, the security in Equatoria is going to continue to be bad. And if you have always seen unknown gunmen from time to time coming up to your areas and misbehaving, that eventually is not going to cease. It's going to continue. This is very unfortunate. What should you do then? What should you do? Look, you should try to put your voices together. You still have some political organizations who are holdouts, who are still negotiating reforms. And what they are saying is that the root causes of the problems that we have always been seeing in South Sudan have not been addressed. And I think they are making a lot of sense, because one of the main root cause is actually the security. You see, the security have always been maintained as militia units who are not properly trained, and that is why actually they behaved the way they behaved in 2013 towards a group of citizens, or towards citizens of a particular tribe, that is towards the Nuer in 2013. I'm sure all of you guys remember what has happened in Juba. And the fact that these guys are maintained as a militia units and are not properly trained with nationalistic character is one of actually the major problems. And during this revitalized transitional government of national unity, there is an arrangement for security reform that's supposed to happen, but eventually it has not happened. And now the revitalized transitional government of national unity has been formed, and those reforms in security have not been made. So that means the same policies that constitutes the root causes of our problem, that is the same policies that we had in the past that brought us to the chaos in 2013, have been upheld right now. They are still there because the militia are still there. They have not underwent training. They are still militia, you see. And pretty much we may not be able to see any transformation if the Minister of Defense, that is Angelina Tenyi, fails to regulate these militia. We'll always see powers contained in the central part, and for that reason, we will be going back to square one. So what I personally would want to suggest, fellow Equatorians, is you might want to pay close attention to what these holdouts are saying, and if security happens to be reformed somehow, and the holdouts get a chance to go inside and negotiate their provisions to be amalgamated into what is called the Constitution of South Sudan, please give them a backing. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because what they are arguing are of interest to you, to your lives. They argue federalism, and this is something that you need. I've already explained this when I was beginning this discussion here. They are arguing that the devolution of powers, and that is the federalism, should happen, and they actually argue that even during this transitional period, this exercise of powers to the state and to the central should be exercised. All right, should be exercised. In this way, people will learn through what is called trial and error. We will see how this is going through this transitional period and adjust accordingly as we cross over to what is called permanent government. No government gets created and then put there and remains fixed. No, everything is just trial and error, and things evolve. I've already said that earlier when I gave an example with the fact that United States of America even is still evolving. That's why Congress go in session every time, and then they're in session, they go there, they look at things, they enact new laws, they eliminate others, they enact new laws, they eliminate others, they bring certain acts. This is just the work of what is called Congress. There we have parliamentarians, all right? We should have had this devolution of powers. It has not happened. So listen to those holdouts. Listen to them carefully. They seem to be talking. They seem to be standing by and protecting some political matters that will help you. And of course, as they stand besides those political matters, those are things that will benefit everybody in the country. It will benefit everybody. But as far as you are concerned, this revitalized transitional government of national unity is now running on basis of certain important things like devolution of powers that could have actually helped you more, but are not there. So it is for this reason, that's why I am saying, pay attention to those guys. Listen to what they are saying. Give them the necessary support. Because if you support what they are saying, you're basically supporting uh, stances in which you eventually would live better in life. Okay. Uh, Hopefully tomorrow, next tomorrow, when they get insight, you the Equatorians, I want you guys to remember that you have what is called interests, especially federalism. Federalism is important to you. It is only that will make you eventually live in your territories free of oppression, arbitrary oppression from national security guys, and you guys at least would have most of your boys who have gone to school and studied medicine, studied engineering and all that, to eventually retract to state governments. And as long as their pays are going to be well, also competing with those who are working in the national level, then they would work within the states and they will construct a better system, be it healthcare, be it education, be it roads, all this, you see. So this system is very important. Try not to be lured to the concept that let these things wait. Wait for what? No, these things cannot wait. These things are supposed to be there. The transitional government of national unity, or a very revitalized transitional government of national unity, should be operating on what is called federalism. That is the states will have their own authorities, and the central authority will have their own authorities. And as they work this out during the revitalized transitional period, of course they are not going to be perfect. There are going to be errors, and the errors will always be corrected as parliamentarians go again and again in session. But the practice of our government, where parliamentarians are not given the atmosphere to go again and again in session to figure out where the problems are and try to adjust, things are always negotiated by certain elites. It's a very, very bad habit, and that is making us stagnant, not go anywhere. So please, my message to you fellow Equatorians is that this revitalized transitional government of national unity is not going to bring any good, all right? And it's just a matter of time. You will come to realize that you will not see, especially in this area of security, if security matters is not improved, then don't expect to see any improved security in your areas. It is going to be always your areas that will be hit hard by malpractices of what is called the national security. Don't be confused when you see fights in the other regions here and there. Those are tribal fights. You guys have not been exercising tribal fights in your areas. Those are tribal fights. So those are not fights where an agent of the government is injecting onto those people. No, those are tribal fights. But in your territories, yes, it's a government agent, the national security, injecting onto people there. You see, looting, beating, sometimes raping, sometimes shooting. And all you hear is unknown gunmen are doing ABCD, unknown gunmen are doing ABCD. No, those are security agents of the government. And they're not doing it anywhere. They don't have the capability to do it in some other areas, but in your areas. That's why federalism is very important to you people, the Equatorians. With that, I hope you will take this message serious. I hope you will stand by those organization or political organization who are talking about federalism and are saying that if devolution of powers don't happen, the government is still operating in unitary system. They are not going to be part of this revitalized transitional government of national unity or part of this government of South Sudan at any time soon. Those people are making a lot of sense, and those people are the ones talking political issues that are of the interest of the nation, including you. And you should, my recommendation is, you should stand by their political arguments. Thank you very much. God bless you.